to today's latest PDHP workshop. My name is Brady West. I'm the director of the Scientific and Technical Core of the Population Dynamics and Health Program. And we're very happy to see everyone here today, both on Zoom and in the room in person here in Ann Arbor. So as I mentioned, this is the latest workshop that's being put on by the Population Dynamics and Health Program, or PDHP. This is a research infrastructure program within the Population Studies Center here at the University of Michigan Institute for Social Research. Workshops are just one of the many services that PDHP provides to the larger university community. We also provide consulting. If you're interested in consulting on any aspects of research methodology, or you're working on a proposal or anything like that, you can become an affiliate of PDHP, and then we can work with you to provide consulting services on all aspects of your research. That's something the Scientific and Technical Core offers. We also have a development core where you can apply for small grants. We have a rolling small grants program. If you'd like additional funding to support pilot projects and other smaller projects that you might be working on, or even projects that are necessary as part of a larger research program, you can also check out that small grant program as well. And we have the PDHP website open on the screen right here, and you can see the different tabs under workshops, small grants, resources, and so forth. You can learn a little bit more about some of the services that we offer. But as I mentioned, workshops are only one of those services. We also are willing to enter into subcontractual arrangements. If you would like ongoing assistance with a research project, you can write a subcontract and work with PDHP analysts and data scientists to help you with a project that you're working on a regular basis, as opposed to just going into individual consulting meetings by being an affiliate. So that's something else that PDHP offers in addition to these other services. But we would encourage you to visit the PDHP website, take a look at all these different services, and certainly reach out to us if you have any questions about the services that we offer. Okay, so turning to today's workshop, this is Generative AI for Practitioners. This is actually part 2. So our presenter today, Alexis, actually provided a part 1 a little bit earlier. And you'll notice that on the PDHP website, there's a link to the PDHP YouTube playlist, which contains videos from all of the past workshops that PDHP has offered. Okay, so you'll see examples of past workshops up on that page, and you can revisit that. Those are all free to the public, so you can take a look at those videos and catch up on any workshops that you may have missed. But this is the second in a 2-part series, at least so far. There might be a third part, but we haven't started talking about that yet, given the way that AI is developing nowadays. But this is the second part in this series, and we're very happy that Alexis agreed to come back and present today. So I'd like to introduce Alexis. Alexis Castellanos is the Program Manager of Data Science here at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan. He's a data scientist consultant with Advanced Research Computing, or ARC, here on campus. And he's also a lecturer in the U of M School of Information. His work focuses on automation, natural language processing, and generative AI, and applying these technologies to advance social science research and data infrastructure here at the university and elsewhere. So again, very happy to have Alexis today. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to him. Just a couple ground rules and logistical points. If you have a question during the workshop, feel free to submit that via the chat if you're online, or just raise your hand here in the room, and we can take questions while the presentation is occurring. Paul is going to be monitoring the chat during the workshop, so he'll be able to let Alexis know if there are questions coming in. But please don't hesitate to submit chat questions if you would like, or you can unmute yourself and just ask the question verbally if you would like, if you're joining on Zoom. But again, we would encourage you here in the room as well. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and we can take those while the presentation is ongoing. Okay. Okay, Paul, anything you'd like to add, or?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. All right, Alexis, I will turn the floor over to you. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Brady. So wow, this would happen live, huh?
And that's not it. Oh, it was. Okay. All right, give me a second. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. So, welcome to my part 2 of this workshop. And today we'll be following up on last year's workshop that was focused specifically on prompting and ChatGPT. Now, a lot has happened in 1 year. So I'd like to lay out kind of a roadmap on what we'll be focusing on this year. We'll start off with prompting, then we'll go over to some providers. We will show some demos with new tools. Then we'll focus on customizations, the ability that agents have, and then we'll lightly touch on privacy and the future. Now, a quick recap. Last year, 2024, like I said, we covered GPT, and there were quite a bit of limitations. One of the biggest insights that we had was the creation of custom GPTs. This year, we have new tools such as reasoning first models, multimodality, and the ability for models to be able to think through steps instead of you having to guide them. Last year's workshop, we focused on the 3 pillars, and these 3 pillars were enough to get you by. This year, we are focusing on a new framework called CRISP. This is being adopted by Amazon, Google, and many other tech companies around. The 3 pillars focused on clarity, context, and role. Clarity, justifying your task. Context, providing any background information on it, such as examples or details that could be easily missed. And role, you are pointing to what their specific task is and how to carry it out. This has been subdivided because we've seen a couple of shifts. Again, models being able to think before responding is a huge one. And that's why this has been split up in this way. Now we have capacity, so setting limits so models don't continuously think. The next one is role assignment, that stays consistent. We have insight. So what type of answer do you want? Do you want a short answer? Do you want a bullet point answer? Do you want an extensive answer? Style, I think we lightly covered on that last year, followed by processes. So do you have any documents, or perhaps are you looking for extended explanations? And lastly, additional examples that the model will be able to follow. Before we go on forward, there's a couple of things to consider. And that is that most AI systems do have custom instructions. These are visible and editable. And what these do is they control how a system will respond to you. So if you're a data scientist and you're looking for, say, someone who knows how to program, or you want your chat AI to speak to you as a senior, or perhaps an intern, then you'll need to prompt it in such a way. And we can actually pause right here, and I'll show where ChatGPT's option is for this. Okay. And this is the interface for ChatGPT. This is the $10 tier, the first tier membership. And if we go on to personalization, this is where you see the custom instructions. I like to have mine clear, concise, and to the point. Provide technical advice. Also, I deal a lot with Python, so I'm always looking forward to staying with this framework. I don't use JavaScript. Some problems will default to different programming languages. So if you are able to specify not only the programming language, but also the tools that you are working with, GPT will be able to respond to you in such a matter if it does exist. And here's a quick example. I use Python, C, C++, SQL mostly. I do have additional instructions. We won't go through all of this, but this should be tailored to your specific needs and what you do on every day. Now, another thing that we should mention while we're here is that you can fill out things like occupation, nicknames, and a little bit more about you. I just like to use this section to reinforce it. I don't provide it additional information just because I'm a little skeptical, right? But that's completely up to you. They've added a new feature, which is memory. So previously, if you had a chat and you started a new chat, you would lose the context in the previous chats. Now, with this memory reference and saving mentions, this is able to have persistence. So what it does is it summarizes previous chats and has them uploaded to your own specific profile. You can say, hey, do you remember we were speaking about X or Y? And it'll be able to go back and reference those chats. Sometimes this might fail if it was in a super extensive chat. However, this does work in most cases, especially if they're long chats. We're talking about longer than 10 back and forths. And that's what the reference for chat history does next. It's able to go back, at times is actually able to tell you what the chat was called, just so you can go back and click on it if you need to retrieve it. The advanced options, I believe these were new options last year, and we haven't had much development here, but ChatGPT, as well as other models, are able to search the web, code. Canvas is more of an interactive platform. And advanced voice mode, I don't use this much, but we will use voice for Gemini in section 3 today. Lastly, well, one of the last things I want to mention here is that this setting right here, improve the model for everyone, means that you are sharing your data with OpenAI willingly, and they are going to train based on the responses that you provide. So if you don't want your data, or you want to prevent your data as much as possible from being shared and being trained on, then you want to have this off. Okay. Any questions before we move back? No. Okay. So while I struggle with changing back, let's go to extend. Oh, my Mac just froze. Okay, we were just on this slide. So we went over the custom instructions and some additional things that you can change within the interface. And again, this is not unique to ChatGPT. This goes across Claude, it goes to Gemini and multiple other models. The settings might look a little bit different, but they've used the same names across. something that you can't change are the hidden system prompts. So these things are limitations that you need to be aware of. The companies might censor specific data or responses, and you cannot go around this. This is on a system level. And I know that depending on what country you're in, or perhaps who is in power, this will change. Now, let's start with a practical example. I would say 2 months ago, I was tasked to work on this very simple problem, which is a department named PSID here at ISR was interested on, hey, can LLMs be leveraged to extract variables in different research projects? Let's start off with PDFs. We're looking for the dependent, independent, perhaps even the control variables from these academic PDFs or links that we have. So I said, sure, this looks like a good case. I would say the main driving factor is that there are thousands of these, and each individual paper can take anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours for a human to go through it. So if it's repetitive and takes a long time, usually we want to use some type of computer to be able to do this. So how I started this project was very simple. I used the 3 pillars, which were outlining my project, then the goal, then the pain point. I came up with these 3 pillars. Extract all variables mentioned in this paper. That provides a precise outcome. I gave it a context or a role. So you're academic assistant, and I moved on to providing it a specific goal, which is the control variables, independent, and well, those were the main focuses. The prompt that I used is here. And if we want to see that, I think it's best if we maybe skip it since I'll have to go back and forth. I was able to improve the outcome, and keep in mind, this is just chatting, by going with the CRISP method. So I broke things down a little bit further. The final prompt is here in the bottom. Said, hey, you're an expert research assistant. You need to scan everything in a PDF. And you need to provide me the independent, dependent, and control groups, and some fixed variable effects. The issue with LLMs, majority of the time, is that they'll be very good on reading everything and only remembering the first and the last portion. Yep, and being a little fuzzy in the middle. This is the attention layer inside GPTs. I'm not sure where they learn this. Maybe they learn this from human behavior, but it's something that we also do. Now, after being able to produce something good through a chat and standardizing, you can actually automate this and create a tool out of it. So that's where custom GPTs come in. So custom GPTs are a way where you can create a mechanism using either the 3 pillars, or you can go with CRISP. You can add additional supporting information if you want, and we'll go ahead and start sharing that right now. Okay, so we're back on the GPT website. And GPTs should be here. If you click on Explore, the ones pre-created are available for you. you could always create your own GPT. In our case, we used this one right here. So a very simple instruction is upload a PDF for variable extraction reporting. So I'll go ahead and show how this works, and then I'll open up the back end of this so we could see how I was able to format everything and provide small example and instructions. Okay. And there we see we upload a PDF. One thing you might have seen is that the model changed. So before it said GPT-5, now it says 4.0. That's just because I created this before GPT-5 came out. But even though I tried GPT-5, it didn't really do a difference. Those prompts are able to guide even older models to still have the same outcome. At times, even older models, because they have less freedom, will be able to have more producible outcomes. And as we could see, it provides me a comprehensive breakdown, and this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted the variable names, what type it is, where's the source, and where is the reference. As you can see, there's quite a bit of these. So having a human go through this, it could have taken maybe 2-3 hours. This example was already verified. We're on later stages of automating this. But I just wanted to show that you can produce a neat output like this with instructions. So if we go back to my GPTs, go on edit. Description is not really needed. This is just in case someone else runs into it. But the instructions are a more of an expansive version of the CRISP method, and also reinforcing some of the rules. So one of the patterns that you'll see is people will use cap letters, hashtags, or asterisk to be able to add the attention to those things, telling the model, this is important, please pay attention to it. I've gone ahead and outlined what it needs to do, what we're doing, and what is exactly mandatory for this section. And again, they lose attention, so you need to reinforce this. I've got a little bit scientific with it, just because we went through multiple examples and we wanted to create something that was reproducible. Our prompt for CRISP just continues to grow. We become more and more precise with each of those letters. And this was created by a domain expert. What are the variable indicators? So outcome variables equals dependent. This is just one-to-one mapping. Yes, question back there. Hmm? Yeah, so de-verification was done with humans. So just like other machine learning projects that you might be familiar with, you need a ground truth, and then you have whatever the model might provide you. So we have an expansive Google sheet with what the outcome variables are. So dependent, and we just compare across and we provided a score. We found something very interesting, which was that our human coders sometimes missed control variables or forgot to mention maybe a variable that wasn't super important, but was indicated in a graph. And I think this just gives us the case of why we want to automate as much of it, and then have a human in the loop go back over it and verify that all these things come from the correct reference, like we saw on the table. And also, did it make any mistakes on our end? Didn't seem like it made any mistakes. We tried, I believe it was 15 examples, and we actually ended up catching a little bit more information. Think that can create a richer analysis down the line for us. Does that make sense? Okay. So the yeah.
I have a follow-up question on that as well. Just I didn't hear you say the word hallucination, and I just want to make sure this is what you're verifying, right? Or are you doing other specific things
Oh, well,
on preventing hallucinations?
yep. So by you providing very specific prompts like this, we showed crisp that was short, but in our crisp prompts, there's always room for improvement, and that's what I'm showing these instructions are. It's still the same framework, just expanded after doing various testing, speaking to domain experts, and some of those human coders exactly what they're looking for. Hallucinations are a thing, and we'll lightly touch on that right after this. Now the next thing is conversation starters. Custom GPTs are actually free to create and host. So if you create a tool like this, you could share it with someone else in a department or a friend, and they'll be able to add their own PDFs and get everything extracted, right? And this is completely free. In terms of knowledge, question?
Tell it more instructions.
So the reason why you would want to create a custom GPT would be because you don't want to type in the instructions every single time. Secondly, the instructions go into a different attention layer than a chat does. So this is additional context before you begin a chat. Furthermore, you can connect this with other people. So you could share your chat, and although this does not have persistence memory, it creates a very reproducible outcome. So if I were to create a tool that does data analysis on a specific type of sheet, I could share this with the person sitting next to me, and they could just use it without having to prompt, without having to go through the verification process and all these things. No problem. And another question? No?
I have one, but I don't know into somebody else or not. My question is, can you just show an example of sharing like that?
Yeah.
Feature? I'd like to see you do that.
Yeah, of course. So I'll skip to that right when we're about to get off.
Yeah.
Another thing you can do, and we'll lightly touch this later on, is a knowledge base. So say if you are reviewing documents, or you are trying to maybe go over a PowerPoint slide that needs to adhere to some guidelines for accessibility, you can add those accessibility guidelines to the knowledge base. So then it takes this, and as it scans through, it's able to follow those policies and edit it in that specific way. Even if you maybe don't understand the guidelines, this will be able to pick up on it. The recommended model, that is, just what model you choose to create this with. It defaults to whenever you did create it, but I could easily change it to 5 or 5 thinking because I have access to those models. Lastly, capabilities. One issue that we did have was at times this custom GPT would try to search on the web for additional context. I shut off web search because it kept doing this. It made things not reproducible, right? I'm not sure what to call it. It wasn't really hallucinating, but it was trying to add additional information. So if you're having that, make sure that web search is off, and you create most importantly the instructions following that framework. Now, something new to add are actions. We won't go into depth about Actions because Actions is an agentic framework. So you know how we mentioned I could share this? So we'll go ahead and do that. By sharing, we could make it only to me, anyone with a link, or GPT store. Before you could monetize GPT stores, now you can't. But GPT store just makes it so if someone is searching, they'll be able to find it. And you just say anyone with a link, and I could easily just share it with maybe Paul. It's over here. But normally it's very easy to just share this with someone. And especially if someone asks you to create this tool, you can share it back to them so they can verify. If it breaks, they can give you examples, and they could actually share the chat back to you. So you see where it was breaking. You continue to engineer the solution. Now, having said all of this, there are still hallucinations, and we need to be aware of them. Yes? Yes. Yep. So if you share a model or a custom GPT with someone who does not have a paid account, they could still access it. They might be limited based on usage just because free accounts are, but it will be free. You could, if you choose to share your GPT with the public, you'll find it here. Last year we went into depth about searching. This year we won't. So back to the PowerPoint slide. Let me stop mirroring this. And I guess before we move on to the additional limitations, do we have any questions? None in chat? Okay. Okay, so what did we do? What I did was I took those initial prompts, I tested, I verified, I got additional information, I expanded on the CRISP network to be able to create that custom GPT. And that custom GPT was shared for verification. Looks like it works out. Currently, I'm in the process of the actions. What actions do are you are able to no longer have a human in the loop. Say you have 100 files that need to be scanned. You could just connect it to an action, and the action will be able to feed all those in systematically. You need to be able to learn how to code in Python, frankly, for this. So that is left out of this workshop, but this is something that we could do if we had a next, like a part 3 or something like that. The next slide. Oh, those are just the details we went over. So in case you need to reference back to them, what does each section do? You can see here, we just spoke about actions. Like I said, this is an external tool. If you need to create, say, an application or workflow, or maybe even a service, you can connect it to one of these and add it on. Now, parameters that matter. We talked about hallucinations. These are still a thing, even if you are the best prompter in the world and your task can be super simple. When you are trying to minimize these, there's really no way to do it through the web because you don't have access to these parameters. However, if you are a developer or you want to learn how you can make this not hallucinate, then you need to be aware of, number one, temperature. So temperature is a way where you reduce its creativity. Really, it's just its variance on the type of solutions that it's looking forward to. The next thing is the seed. I think anyone that has done machine learning is familiar with seeds, but If you're not, seed is basically you start from this initial position every single time, so that way it's reproducible. K-top and or top K and top P, that is just both of these depend on the words probabilities that are coming next. So if you reduce these, it also makes it more reproducible. So you might get the same sentence answer every single time. The seed starts off from the initial point, and temperature shuts down its creativity path. So you can make very reproducible systems. Even if the answer is not factual, it will be reproducible every single time, or at least semantically. Again, this goes into agents, so we won't go into how to code these and how to create systems, but definitely something to look into. And if you are just looking for, hey, if I want to make something super reproducible or put this into my business, then you could use this chart as a reference. I'd say most people are looking for determinism, and for that, set temperature to 0, seed whatever you want, and K-top whatever you want. As long as you set it, you will always have identical outputs. Any questions? Yeah.
Are these settings specific to the custom GPT? These are global settings, right?
No, so when you interact with LLMs online, these are not set for you. And that's because they've thought that giving people a mix of this creates more engagement. And that's really what they're looking for. They're not looking for strict programs. They're looking for people to be creative, use this as writing tools, and overall expand how many people are on the website. That's how these companies are evaluated, right? If you do want to set these, you will need to learn how to program in at least Python to be able to do it.
I can't decide whether I should use the mic or not, but yeah, I mean, you kind of answered my question by saying you got to use Python here, but I was just curious if you can set this individually by custom GPT as opposed to, having to toggle it off and on globally, or, if I just want it for your PDF task, if I just want that task to be strict determinism, temperature set to 0, can I code that in just for that custom GPT, or is it a global only setting?
No, you're not able to set that through the interface, well, the public interface. However, if you're interested, there is a GPT playground that I could show really quickly right now. And this gives you access to some of the variables, but not all of them. Okay, so this is the GPT playground. If you are a developer, this is likely the first tool you will start using if you're using ChatGPT to develop. You can add tools. You can add variables. And somewhere around here. Okay, so it's blocked off for me. But that's usually where you're able to access all those like temperature, K-top, seed. So you are able to reduce those hallucinations. And I guess since we're here, we should probably just mention a couple other things about ChatGPT. So they've released other products such as Codex. So Codex is a model that is specifically designed just for programming. So if you are learning how to program or you're trying to connect this to your own projects, then this is the model you would want to use. It is linked here, but you can also look up ChatGPT Codex, and there's also a way you can connect it to GitHub. You just need to allow it. And as you can see, it already has access to some of my information. Another thing that was recently added was projects. So projects, you can think of it as a higher order collection than custom GPTs. Your projects can actually have multiple custom GPTs being referenced, and it does have persistent memory. This means that these projects, if say you've done work with multiple custom GPTs, it remembers everything you've done. For my case of having a tool that is able to do the variable extraction, it's not beneficial for me because if I keep retrying the same PDF, then it's going to remember that PDF and it's going to remember what's wrong, right? So this is where it gets tricky. Like, do you want to use a custom GPT? Do you want to use a project? You need to be aware of this. If I share this PDF extractor with someone, it does not remember anything that's been fed into it. And that's the bright side. If we create a project, it will remember these PDFs and it could share some of that information. It could also store it. If I try to retest it, it might remember that it already got it wrong, right? So we want to avoid this. Those are the major changes with ChatGPT. Another one is, well, I would say a huge one, was the backlash for ChatGPT 5. So ChatGPT 5 is not a regular model in a sense. It's an umbrella. So what it does is it actually reroutes you to the best possible model that it thinks you need to answer a specific question. So this is why people said last year that prompting would become less important. Now it's even more important because you need to be very specific about what you want and how you want it done. If not, you will be rerouted to the cheapest, most available model, and you'll get a pretty subpar response. You're not able to see all the models here. I only have access to the legacy GPT-4o, but if we head over here, this is my own service. I'll be able to show that OpenAI actually has multiple models available in the backend. So imagine you're sending a prompt, and then it has to choose what model to send your prompt to. If you're not very specific, you end up with a not so good response. Okay. Does that make sense for everyone? Why prompting is so important? Any questions online? One question right there.
Prompt kind of like indicate like a more advanced models like that. So like how do you prompt in a way that it would choose
Oh, how to prompt so it chooses the higher grade model versus the lowest.
Mm.
So the more context you add, the more complexity there is in your instructions, it will be pushed towards a higher model. But if you ask a simple question, like many people were doing of, hey, what's the latest news on, say, the government today? That gets rerouted to the most simple models. So you want to be very expansive, especially if you have, like I showed, steps on how to do something. That will get rerouted to a thinking model, and we'll go over those thinking models next. That's basically why. Just be very specific and outline what you want done.
Can you not just like request a specific model by name? Does it not work that way?
No, it doesn't work that way, sadly. So if you see here, there are some models that, like O3 Mini is a thinking model. Oh, I think we stopped sharing. Okay, so there's multiple ChatGPT models, and GPT-5 is the umbrella model. It directs the traffic. There's also multiple variations of each model. So you might have a 4 that does not have extended thinking. 4.0 does have thinking. This one thinks a little bit. That's why it's 4.0 mini, right? So depending on the complexity, it's really rerouting you to whatever it thinks it's best. I have a theory that it's actually rerouting you to the best possible model for the cheapest price, right? So that's why you've seen a lot of people complain about GPT-5, and especially when it first came out, it seems like the routing was optimized too much to the simplest models. I think they fixed it for the most part. Okay, and we'll head back to the slides. Okay, and we were here. So do we have any more questions about reproducibility, tools, how to use, if something's available? No, nothing online either?
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to take maybe a 5-minute break for everyone or continue? How's everyone feeling? Fine? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about providers. A lot has happened in 1 year. So I would say we have 6 huge players in the AI game. For commercial or proprietary, basically cloud-only models, we have OpenAI or ChatGPT. We have Anthropic, which is the one I use the most. We have Google Gemini, which is a slew of products because Google is focused on products. Then we have XAI, Grok, that's provided by Elon Musk. And we have some open source or self-hostable models. Those are Meta and DeepSeek. So it really depends on what you're looking for and also how reliable you want your systems to be, how much funding do you have, etc. The key trade-off at the end of it, it's privacy versus turnkey, right? Do you want to just be able to use a system, or do you want something that's completely private? So just like before, a lot has changed from last year to this year. And we might ask, well, what caused all of this? I think what actually happened was DeepSeek. Initially, right after, I think our workshop 2 months later, we got the first thinking model, which was released by OpenAI. This thinking model, what it basically did was doing chain of thought. Chain of thought reasoning is basically thinking step by step before it even answers to you. It also does some type of sampling on the back end. So if it's going to suggest something, it might do this 10 times, and whatever the majority class is, then it will use those responses, aggregate them, and provide them back to you to give you the best possible response. We went over chain of thought last year, and it is linked here on the slides if you're interested about reading. But then we saw DeepSeek in early 2025. And what they basically did was they used reinforcement learning to be able to create thinking models that were extremely efficient. This went on to impact the ecosystem by not only reducing the cost of everyone because other companies wouldn't be able to compete, but also by pressuring people to release their own open source models. It's ironic that a company named OpenAI wouldn't have OpenAI. Yep, they do now. So this pushed the open source acceleration, DeepSeek mainly being the catalyst behind it. And then we saw industry response, like you said, it's listed down here somewhere. OpenAI then has released their own open versions. They're not the best, but they did do it. We've also had the multimodal adoption. So before, not all models were able to create images or interpret videos, speak to you, but now every frontier lab is able to do this. And we can thank Google and Llama by Meta or Facebook for this. I would say a couple of things to be aware of is that now the markets are splitting, and or at least these main 6 providers are focused on something different. Meta, I think, even though they're open source right now, eventually they're going to go closed source, and they're releasing a lot of technology like the Meta glasses that are able to see and interpret everything that you are seeing. They also have a wristband that's able to, or at least it's supposed to be able to, detect any type of hand movement that you are going to do. I'm not sure what this might be helpful for, at least right now. And if you saw the live, it was actually worse than when Elon Musk tried to throw the ball to the Tesla truck. But this is where we have these current 6 big players. OpenAI is the generalist. Anthropic does alignment and long reasoning. Google, it's a multimodal ecosystem. Meta, right now it's the open source backbone. DeepSeek, it's focused on efficiency first. XAI, it's, I would say, culture first challenger, to put it lightly. It's not as censored as other models, and it's been trained on pretty much the same data. The way you can think about this is that, remember those hidden prompts that are on a system level? They included less of those, so there's less controls, and it's more unfiltered with its responses. We had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted you to expand on this DeepSeek phenomenon. So, like when you say efficiency, what parameters are we optimizing for? And then you might just give a little bit of more background about, what exactly is DeepSeek and why it's different than these others.
Sure.
Per minute tokens.
Well, we actually have a slide right after this one, just for that.
My mind.
Okay, cool. So before we go into each of these companies and their contribution, we need to understand these specific terms right here: context window, model size, quantization, latency versus throughput. The only one we really need to focus on if you want to only use Claude are context windows. And you can think about this as short-term memory. That's everything that's being uploaded into that chat. These context windows limit you on how long your chat can go or how much you can feed in a specific chat. When you have something like a custom GPT, it's actually external and it goes into a different layer. And just to briefly go over the other ones, model size, how many parameters does the model have? You can think about this almost like polynomials, right? Just because it increases doesn't mean it's a better solution. Dequantization, JPEG for models. Can we reduce them without losing, say, majority of what we see in an image? And latency versus throughput. So latency is how fast you're getting a response versus throughput. Are you able to do this in a batch capacity? That's where agents come in, right? Now, the DeepSeek phenomenon. So DeepSeek did a lot, like a crazy amount of work. They were open source and transparent. they provided not only their models, but also their training stops. So other companies were able to properly reproduce the work, or so sometimes some grad students were able to create even more efficient systems, like at Stanford. This whole thing then created multiple rapid adoptions, not only with Meta, but also IBM. We also have Google now releasing open source models, and it dropped the complete cost. And this is because they did something called mixture of experts. So how mixture of experts works is, remember how ChatGPT 5 reroutes your query? So mixture of experts by DeepSeek does something very similar in the back end. Without getting too technical, they create, say, a collection of workers. Each one has a different specific job it was trained to do. And when your query comes in, DeepSeek then reroutes your query to only that specific model. Even if your, say, the DeepSeek model is 600,000 billion parameters, you might only be activating 10 billion of them if your task is not very complex. And this makes it more efficient because it doesn't need as much power or hardware to be able to run. GPT-5, I believe it's a similar type of system, but not exactly the same. Also, why I mentioned my theory of, I think they are trying to just optimize for the lowest cost. They also did sparse attention. So, and by the way, all these have links to sites or the documents if you want to take additional time to read through them. So sparse attention, able to identify only that task that it's looking forward to, extract it, and then work on that. Versus before, models would read top to bottom. And by the way, there's a link down here for DeepSeek's GitHub. They do have a lot of code available if you have a lab or say you're interested in learning the deep ends of optimization. You can click on that and start to use some of their code. Does that answer your questions about efficiency?
Yeah, I mean, I just think of it myself as just like power efficiency, right?
Mhm.
In terms of just running very results. But does that also translate into like quicker? Is there anything that the users would notice? Like, are we going to get quicker responses based on this, or is it just simply like a invisible power savings on the back end?
Yeah, so because a model is much smaller, it usually has better output or throughput. So it will be quicker, especially if you have very large servers like they do. I know that one of their groundbreaking things was they were able to have models put out like 300,000 tokens per second, which is insane because if you interact with ChatGPT the way it is today, you get about 30 tokens per second. Free users might see like 10. So the efficiency, it's on a different level.